If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today. We're great fans of Vaush over here on this channel. In fact, many people who know me know Vaush as the fat bearded liberal that cooked me into becoming a leftist soy boy, actually. So it's very, very fascinating that now, full circle, I'm going to go over this thing that Vaush is talking about. Vaush arguing with chat about weed addiction and bans angry chatter. So remember, I'm not, like, I'm pro-weed as far as, like, I use weed all the time and I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not, but, like, doing weed excessively is dangerous. It's not good for you. It's bad for your mental health. It can worsen depression. I'm aware of this too. And that's why, like, I've been trying to myself, like, scale back when I use my weed. Like, I try not to smoke weed right when I get up in the morning anymore, because that fucks up my day, it seems like. And then other times though, if I control it, if it's good moderation, then it honestly is something that I find is very enjoyable. It helps me relax or focus, helps me, I don't know, just not feel quite as anxious or whatever. But it's just like everything else, right? Too much of a good thing can absolutely be a bad thing. And the research is also, like, kind of weird and mixed, because there is a study that came out in 2021 that found that marijuana actually reduced your brain's ability to utilize effectively dopamine. So even when you stopped using weed, your dopamine receptors never fully recover to the point of actually being able to use and process dopamine the way that normal people's brains otherwise would/should. So that is a compelling argument, and one that persuaded me and really helped motivate me, at least partially, to stop using weed as heavily as I was a couple years back. But again, the research is shoddy, because I was researching it recently. A new study just came out where they did brain scans, and guess what? People that are heavy pot users had no difference in their dopamine receptors compared to people that didn't use pot. Or if they did, it was too minor to actually make a difference. Like, it wouldn't be like marijuana contributes to depression kind of thing. It's very mixed. It's something that I usually say, like, use with caution. I use weed, but I also have been using weed for a very long time. I'm very familiar with it. I don't get, like, scary high really ever. But for people that are new to it, like, it can become dangerous. It can definitely become something that is, because it's really fun and really exciting, it makes you feel really good. It could become something that becomes a problem. I myself have struggled legitimately with weed addiction. When it came time to quit, when it came time to not do it, it was excruciatingly difficult for me. When I realized I was spending a lot of money on weed, way more than I was actually able to afford, that concerned me greatly. And I realized this, whether it's weed or heroin, it doesn't matter. For me, that's a problem. And before we jump into this video, last thing I'll say, my thoughts on all this, of course, is something I read. It was a quote, and it was very compelling. It said, "The hardest addiction to break is your own." So what that means is that for the guy quitting heroin, that is really difficult. But you know what? If you're dependent on weed, if your brain has developed this mental dependency, it's going to be hard to quit that too. And trying to compare, like, well, it's not like quitting heroin. It might not have any physical withdrawal symptoms that I'll die from. Okay, fine, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you feel like dog shit. So let's see what Vaush has to say here.
It is impossible for me to describe how little I trust people who habitually use drugs. Vaush, it feels bad when you say that because I'm legit trying to get off drugs. Yeah, so wouldn't that mean that you're Wait, why? Wait, why? Wouldn't that be...
Well, I habitually use marijuana. I mean, it depends. Do we want to go debate bro on this? I think I probably know what Vaush is getting at. Like, if you have an addiction, if it's out of control, if you cannot function without this. Weed, for example, is something I enjoy. And I talked about when I was addicted to weed way back, how I don't want to just stop using weed forever because I really enjoy it. I want to have a healthier relationship with it. And I don't know if I definitely still have a dependency on it, but it's not at all the way it was. It's not like the way it was in my past. It was very much like, if I don't have weed, then I know it's a bad day. That's it. This is very much not the case. Weed is something that's very secondary to me. It's something I do every now and again to kind of relax. I sometimes forget that I have this vape pen. like even in my pocket or whatever. Like it's not really like on the forefront of my mind. I don't feel like my relationship with marijuana is unhealthy the way that it was in the past. But I still use this pretty much like every day. Like I'll hit it here and there, but like with my tolerance and whatnot, it's not like I'm blazed as shit. Instantly, 14 seconds in, like I kind of take issue partially with what Vaush is saying here because he's not specifying what drugs he's referring to. Some people could say that like, well, you take a lot of Adderall, you take a lot of antidepressants, you're taking a lot of drugs too. People take a lot of drugs for a lot of reasons. Why are they taking the drugs? How does the drug affect them? All of this is going to determine whether or not I would trust a person. I'm not just going to be like, oh, they like to smoke pot, I don't trust them.
Wouldn't it be the opposite? Wouldn't you feel bad about that if you were trying to get on drugs and I was condemning drug use? That's good. I thought you smoked in the bank. No, I never smoke. I drink sometimes, and I have a lot of coffee. Vaush, shaming people doesn't help them get off. If I wanted them to get off, I would jerk them off, okay? If I wanted to make broad statements saying that I don't trust habitual drug users, I would make broad statements saying that I don't trust habitual drug users. I'm not trying to help anyone get off. I'm not talking to a person directly. I'm just saying that I don't.
Yeah, but like so this is exactly why you should clarify what drugs you mean. Caffeine is literally a drug. Alcohol is literally a drug. Alcohol affects you in ways that are far more dangerous and make you more untrustworthy than marijuana does. The studies on how marijuana affects your brain. Now, we know obviously if you are a heavy pot smoker before you turn, I think it's like 23, 25, like that range, it can hinder and develop your brain development. And that's something to be aware of and be careful about. But like, I'm pretty sure there's studies that show that alcohol alters your brain chemistry too, right? I don't even think you need to be an alcoholic. I think you just need to drink alcohol enough times for it to alter your brain somewhat. Alcohol interferes with the brain's communication pathways and can affect the way the brain looks and works. Alcohol makes it harder for the brain areas controlling balance, memory, speech, and judgment to do their jobs. Okay. Now let me look this up about weed. Using marijuana before 18 may affect how the brain builds connections for functions like attention, memory, and learning. Marijuana's effects on attention, memory, and learning may last a long time or even be permanent, but more research is needed to fully understand these effects. So notice the issue here. Weed has issues if you're using it before the age of 18. Alcohol, it seems, changes your brain. That's that. What about caffeine? Overuse can range from unpleasant side effects including troubled sleep, jitters, irritability, and gastric distress. Quitting caffeine, which can improve alertness, mood, and cognitive function. Like, so okay, I am taking some issue here with what Vaush is saying. This seems kind of silly. Now I know we're only 40 seconds in. I don't want to hyper fixate on all these little details. Let's hear his overall point.
Drugs, the thing that impede the functioning of your brain. Why are you can say anything to this chat. I swear. Oh my God, dude. Literally anything. Hey, chat, I've got a banger of a hot take here. Don't you think drugs impede reasoning somewhat? I don't know about that one, Vaush. I feel like that might be problematic. I feel like that might be ableist. I feel like that might be a little bit retarded. Is it though, chat? Is that the thing that I said? Is it retarded? So that's why you hate musicians? Unironically.
Like, what drug? Adderall is a drug. People abuse Adderall. People use it to get high. But yet, when you're taking the proper dose, it doesn't impede your logic skills or your reasoning. It actually benefits you immensely. I can argue right now that weed for me has felt that way. Now, it's true that it probably does affect negatively cognitive functioning in other areas like memory and stuff because it's harder to remember like what I just said or stuff. Like that's happened before for sure. So he's not totally wrong about that. It's just that I feel he's ignoring the nuance here.
Weren't you high when debating someone back in 2019? Yeah, I stopped smoking about 3 years ago. But yeah, I was high back then. You've done several drunk streams? Yeah. Have you noticed any impairment to my reasoning when I do them? Have you? Have you noticed a correlation perhaps between me being drunk on stream and me dedicating 90 minutes of that stream to making jokes that I don't have a water sports kink? Like, what do you want from me? How's the Adderall shortage going? Brutal as always. Your alcohol stream is the funniest ever though. Yeah, being drunk is super fun. I'm a happy drunk. Always happy when I'm drunk and horny. Yes, but only when you're drunk. I don't distrust you as a person when sober because you've been drunk in the past. Dog, are we really doing this? I said habitual drug users, as in people who use them frequently. People who frequently use drugs, either because they have an addiction or because they're seeking the escapism. I have reasons to distrust both. If you don't distrust either of them, you're an idiot. It's okay to be those things while also distrusting them. For example, you could fairly say that you distrust people who are overly like chauvinistic as a joke. You can say that about me. That's fine. Stop pretending that there's no reason to say that with regards to drugs and reasonability, okay? Why does everyone get offended by everything that I say? You realize you could just go,
I do think that this is lacking a bit of nuance here because it's like habitual drug users, again, like you're acknowledging the Adderall shortage. You're acknowledging that you are a habitual drug user, but that drug is prescribed. Why is that drug different? What is the difference? There are people who have medical marijuana, who are prescribed to take medical marijuana. That would be habitual. He would probably say recreational habitual use. Like, I'm being charitable to Vaush here, of course, because Vaush is generally good faith, and I don't think that he means it to sound like quite so little nuanced. He probably means recreational habitual drug use, but I just think, again, that ignores nuance. There are some people who have raging ADHD and depression, and weed can really help calm them down and help them focus and help them with their reasoning skills, because it turns out you can sometimes be more reasonable when you're not feeling this crushing weight of anxiety. He clarifies, okay, well, I'm going over the video, and it's an 8-minute video. I'm not going to sit here and watch Vaush talk for 8 minutes and not say anything.
Any other leftist online who are all pissing themselves and shitting themselves nonstop, trying not to offend their piss crybaby audience, you know? This is the one place, this is the only place where we can be cool and chill and normal. Please, God, everything. It's drugs and music, okay? We need to add to a list of stuff that I can't bring up. Vaush, I trust weed heads, but I don't trust like alcoholics. Yeah, that's true. Alcoholics are probably less trustworthy on average than weed heads by a pretty significant margin. Vaush,
okay, so he acknowledges that there's like a nuance there and a difference, and he acknowledges there's a huge difference there. That someone who's an alcoholic versus someone who's a weed addict, weed head, pothead, whatever, then obviously there's a difference there. There's a difference with why they're addicted, what that addiction does to them. And that's another thing too that I think is really important, that I think Vaush might be missing, and why his take probably got backlash originally and now he has to clarify. Another thing is a lot of people that are against antidepressants will say, how is that not a drug addiction? What is the answer to that question? Genuinely, I need to take this pill every day, and if I don't, I'm going to feel like garbage. And then I'm going to start feeling like I'm going crazy, like I need this pill. How does that not sound like a drug addiction? The difference is, what are the effects of taking that medication long term? If every day you really want to drink alcohol and you feel like you're going to go crazy if you don't drink alcohol, and then you drink alcohol and you keep doing it, it's going to destroy your liver. It's going to ruin your relationships. Vaush is right. It will make you more at least less trustworthy or more likely to lie, because you are desperate to get this thing. Maybe you need to lie a little bit to get some money just to get this thing. When this happens, that's a negative. What happens when you take your antidepressants every day? You get better. You feel better than before. You have more clarity in your head. But both are still a dependency on something. What makes it an addiction and like a bad thing, like an addiction, like when we think of that as a bad thing, versus like a dependency, is the long-term negative effects.
Apply some critical thinking. Can you think of any possible issues with habitual drug use? Just any, like hypothetically. Just how about we put to use some of the faculties that we've developed during the stream, during the time that we've spent together, and you could think possibly, what about the habitual use of a chemical that impedes brain functioning might mean theoretically, about a person or about what they do or how they act? Just could you fill in the blanks? Do I have to explain all of it? You can this reminds me of that email I got where I said you shouldn't do crack in a subway, and a person emailed me being like, I want to debate you on how it's problematic of you to have said that you can't do crack in a subway. Crack users have rights too, and where else are they supposed to do it, you know? Vaush, you're just really weird on this topic. I've known many people who smoke and they're perfectly fine functional people. Yeah, including you, according to you.
No one's stealing money to fuel antidepressant use, LOL? They could. If you need your antidepressants and you don't have insurance and it's going to cost you $45 and you're broke as then you might lie to your parents and say, I need $45, my car broke down, so you can go get your antidepressants because you're feeling so bad and you know you better take them because now you're going into withdrawals. This is what I mean, right? So like, here we go. Long-term weed effects on the brain in adults. American addiction centers. For adults over the age of 18, potentially persistent memory loss and declines in IQ may be linked to chronic or heavy marijuana use, though the evidence isn't conclusive. Psychiatric disorders, that too, people are like, it can cause schizophrenia. That's only if you're already predisposed to it. If you have multiple members of your family that have had schizophrenia, you should not use marijuana. But just if that negatively affects some people doesn't mean that it doesn't really greatly benefit other people. May hasten age-related loss of hippocampal neurons. In one study, rats exposed. But yeah, this is what I mean, is none of this is actually conclusive. Alcohol interferes with the brain's communication pathways. Alcohol makes it harder for the brain, blah, blah, blah. Long-term heavy drinking causes alterations in the neurons, such as reductions in their size. Below are a few key topics related to alcohol in the brain. Misuse of alcohol during adolescence can alter brain development, potentially resulting in long-lasting changes in brain structure and function. Now, you might be saying, yeah, they're actually kind of comparable in some ways, and you wouldn't be wrong. But again, the reason that I'm comparing this here is because Vaush said that he drinks. of course he's not drinking every day. I don't think he's like a drunk. He's drinking enough though to drink. He's been on stream drunk before. He drinks on stream for fun. So why should I not trust him? That's why I bring up the similarities and the differences. Yeah, it just seems that the issues with alcohol are far more conclusive, whereas the issues with weed are very much like one study suggested this, but another study kind of said this. Then that study was doubted because of a new study. It seems like there's a lot of research developing.
The idea of habitual use of drugs can make a person untrustworthy. The idea that this is even remotely controversial to you is demonstrative of a problem in your brain, okay? Are you high now? Like, seriously, come on. Jesus Christ. Like, you realize how you sound, right? Like, this is like well, I knew an aunt who smoked for 30 years and never got lung cancer. I have a friend who drinks all the time, and he's like, what argument are you making? What are you even saying? What are you saying to me right now? What words are you using? Is this English? Are you using English right now? Is this a different language? Is this Portuguese, the fake version of Spanish? What are you saying? There's always going to be someone in chat who's going to interpret whatever you say as a personal attack no matter what because it happens to hit their particular anxiety. Yeah, that's always it. It's always people who can't. It's a sign of low self-esteem because I can disagree with people.
Yeah, so it depends. If his general criticism is that there are people who are using weed as a coping mechanism, they're definitely dependent on it, but they're coping about it. They're in denial. They're like, it's not an addiction. It's not like heroin. Okay, fair. I have a dependency on weed. I'm a habitual weed user. I have a dependency on weed. Sure. Isn't that more of a reason why you should trust me now? I'm honest about that. There are people also who are like, yeah, I'm addicted to caffeine, LOL. And most of them are. Have you ever tried going a couple days without caffeine if you are a habitual coffee drinker? I have. And I can tell you right now, it sucks. There was this one time I literally thought that I was having like a manic depressive episode or something. I was like I felt so emotionally, mentally cloudy and bad. My emotions were everywhere. I went outside for a walk and drank a Mountain Dew and came back and I felt like I just like taken my Adderall or something. I felt worlds better and so much more chill. And that's when I realized I'm like, wow, I really need caffeine. Shit. And actually that motivated me to wean myself off of it a little bit. And I still drink caffeine. I still drink it pretty frequently, but it's also, it's not something where I'm like, oh my God, if I don't have this, I'm going to like freak the fuck out. Like, I guess, yeah, be honest about your dependency. Don't cope about it. But so what? If it's not causing a problem for me or for people around me or not affecting my budget or not affecting my brain, why is it a problem?
Because I can disagree with people. But when people, like when I watch live streamers and they say some shit I disagree with, I never think I'm being attacked. I never think that, even if it's my shit. And like, I deal with that a lot too, because I have plenty of extremely strong interest.
I'm sorry, Vaush. I respect you a great deal, my friend, but you know, a lot of people think that I'm like a suck up to you, so forgive me, Father, I'm about to sin. That was my trustworthiness exhaling from my lungs.
Interests and disinterests. So it's not as though I'm not easy to like be disagreeable towards, at least by my definition, but I never interpret it as a personal attack. But a lot of people get really upset because they're like, oh no, you know, like I personally have to correct this injustice that has been committed against me. But in this case, like, come on, man. Habitual drug use, untrustworthiness, come on. Vaush, you keep saying drugs, but that includes caffeine and prescription medications.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you. I want to know what you have to say to this because I would like clarification.
Well, technically, food is a drug. You know what I mean. Habitual like brain substance altering. Come on, please.
He means like what I said. I like I said, I was being charitable to Vaush, and I because I assumed he meant habitual use of recreational drugs, not drugs you're prescribed, not drugs that you're prescribed to alter your brain, because some people need drugs that alter their brain, like people with ADHD or depression. That's okay. Again, it's the recreational use.
Can you not like respond to your own caveats with what you assume I will see? I just think Vaush is being a combative asshole. Well, yeah, that's the brand. And also me. You know, you ask my parents about that.
He doesn't habitually drink. The keyword is habitual. That's fair, I guess. But like habitually using weed compared to habitually using alcohol, alcohol has worse effects. So there still is a necessary distinguishing like factor there that I think needs to be taken into consideration because what you are habitually using varies and depends, right? Like what he just said to be funny, like people habitually eat food, like you have to clarify what that means.
But at the same time, like, yeah, this, like, I guess, man, I don't know. It just, the cope is what makes me worry, dude. If you're super into weed or whatever, fine, you know? But then there are people who will be like, actually, there's nothing wrong with smoking weed 6 times a day. That's not an addiction. Addiction isn't when you have to smoke weed before you do literally anything. It's just like, dude, it's cool, whatever. That the cope is what bothers me. Like, if you use drugs, if you're like if you like coke or whatever, meth or some shit, I'm not your mom. Then when people in chat are like, why would you say that habitual drug use makes a person untrustworthy? If you say that, you just don't have much experience, I guess, with the like effects that drugs have on people at any level. And no, by drugs, I do not mean like, oh, this person takes 5 milligrams a day of Adderall or like some caffeine. I mean, drugs in many cases are literally addictive, which can, you know, impede a person's reliability when it comes to basically every level of their functionality, because it impedes their brain functions and it makes them feel worse and it makes them do stuff to get like the high or whatever. You know, it's like, it's very basic stuff. Please avert Vaush make this argument like 8 times. Yeah. I think it's because most people don't use hardcore drug users.
It's also, it's okay. There's 2 things. Is one, I'm able to analyze this now. One, I understand Vaush's point now much more full, and I understand fully his point. Obviously, and to be clear, I will clarify further. I don't think Vaush habitually drinks or anything like that. I was merely making a comparison to drugs that he is okay saying he does versus drugs that he doesn't do. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, I understand his problem here is he's just not clarifying enough, and because it's sort of vague and ambiguous, it opens the door for interpretation, and Vaush probably could just sort of clarify what he means. Like, look, if you want to be into weed, like, that's fine or whatever, but like, don't just be in denial to yourself that it's like an addiction or something. Like, of course, if you're doing it 6 times a day, if you feel like you need your weed or else you will not be able to even feel happy, that's a problem. And don't be in denial about that. But that can go for anything. If that was his overall point, I think that would be much more agreeable. But it was sort of like, I don't trust people that use drugs. Well, what drugs? Come on, guys. You know what drugs I'm talking about. Come on. Like, well, no, we don't really. Like, I don't really know. I mean, I assume, again, since I assume Vaush is good faith, and he is, I don't, like, think he is actually saying something, like, malicious, but, like, it's more of this opens the door for interpretation.
How many losers are actually coming at you right
yeah,
now?
and the other thing is also, it does lack nuance, because habitually using some drugs can impede your reliability and your ability and your trustworthiness. But some habitual use of other drugs doesn't. And so because it was never explained fully, like, this is what I'm talking about, or this is why, I mean, this drug specifically, like, now he's talking about weed, I get it. But like, when you say like habitual drug user, I genuinely don't know what that means, because that could fall under a lot of different definitions.
Now most people in chat don't really care and want to move on. That's true. That's probably true. That's true. That's probably true. What does it matter if it doesn't affect or benefits your normal? Okay. Night. We're moving on.
Yeah.
God damn you guys. Holy shit. You can lead a horse to water, huh?
I'm so curious about that. The answer there. Like, I guess the answer would probably be, if you're habitually using it, even if it might help in a little bit because you feel high and happy, it long-term has negatives. But there are some drugs that don't. I don't think Vaush thinks anything, you know, like, badly. I don't think Vaush is like, yeah, all people that like weed or something. I don't think that, obviously. I'm merely trying to kind of explain how I understand why people in chat would feel defensive, because he's not being very clear, and because it's vague, it's easy to interpret it however you want to interpret it.
Matt, I can't take Vaush seriously anymore after he said weed smokers are untrustworthy. Lamau. Don't let the door hit your fucking toasted ass on the way out, you stupid. Go use 1/3 of your disposable income on weed, you stupid. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. They're so defensive. They're so defensive. They're the most fragile people in the world. It's literally a drug that makes you chill, and you still can't chill the fuck out. Oh my God. I'm enabling. White Nervosa, thank you for this one. The legendary generation.
Maybe you should take a toke, Vaush.
Ban for you, your children, and 4 generations hence. None of you shall come back to VGG. Go forth. Assuming you'll ever be able to get it up with all the fucking weed you're smoking. Does weed actually make it harder to get hard? I don't actually know. No, it doesn't? Oh, okay, never mind. Then there we go. Then many generations will be prevented, you know? Wienervona's Vaush's Oppenheimer. Yeah, I'm watching with my hollow eyes, you know, the explosions chain across VGG.
Interesting. I get it, though. Obviously, if you need weed to feel happy, if you need weed to function, there's a problem there, and don't be in denial about it. And I have been that stoner before who needed weed to function, or else I felt like I was going to freak the fuck out. And I recognized then, this is a problem. This isn't good. Like, weed now is something I enjoy doing it. I don't need to do it. Vaush is right about needing to do something is kind of a problem. Like, that's how I feel about my nicotine. Like, I don't like that I'm dependent on that, so I get it. But just being dependent on something does not translate to untrustworthiness. It sounded like he was saying if you use weed regularly, you're untrustworthy, which is a pretty big claim to make, especially considering weed is being legalized for medicinal benefits and everything else all over the country. So that's really, I think, where the disagreement came in. But long story short, I agree with the point like Vaush was trying to get at for sure. And of course, overly depending on weed like can have negative effects on your brain and whatnot, your development, etc. But the lack of nuance, I think, is the lack of nuance and him getting defensive combined made it into a very combative 8-minute altercation.